welcome to another episode of Intesoul Leadership, where we actually are here to help the leaders who have been in the trenches for a while, those who are emerging and want to be leaders that's on their track for success. We are here to supply you with all of the information, the wisdom from our experiences, because it is my goal to touch at least 1 million leaders to help us look different, sound different, and leave people feeling different. And when I say look different, I don't mean necessarily our physical features need to change, but what I do mean is that our demeanor, and as we feel better about ourselves, as we continue to nurture ourselves and make sure that we understand leaders do matter, and therefore once we get that, we'll know that the individuals matter too. So it is my pleasure. I'm telling you, I am so excited to have Mr. Harvey Clay here. He was a part of my maturing as an adult. We served in the same church for a while. I had his children and youth ministry, but he was so supportive. He was an active parent, but also I bought many cars from him, and he's just a tremendous leader. He was a leader in the Ford Motor Company, and he's even transitioned into having barbecue places. So I just want to welcome Mr. Harvey Clay. Thank you for being here.
Yvette, it is my pleasure to be here. I just think that what you've done is inspire me to be happy to see you.
Well, thank you. You've always been a great supporter, and I want to thank you publicly for, there's those people and times in our lives when we've gotten into trouble or we need some help. You have been one of those persons that were always there. And being in Connecticut, away from family, and when I needed transportation or I needed a shift from one car to another, I always found it a pleasure to be able to walk into your dealership and see you in action authentically. And when I say that, I've shared that with you viewers that we were in ministry together, but it wasn't anything in Mr. Clay's dealership for a Bible to be in the center of the showroom. I just really applaud you, especially in this time when we're talking about authenticity a great deal. We're going to lean in. We're going to just take all you're going to give us with regards to leadership. And we want to just start out, give us the highlights of your career as a leader.
Well, it started really even as my social service background, and that's where I come from. My education, I have a social service administration degree from graduate school, where I learned that the first thing I needed to do to be successful wasn't to just learn the books, but I needed to getting to know me. I found value because I didn't know who I was. I grew up really fairly listless without having anything that I planned to execute. It was like being a leaf on a tree, that the leaf grows, fall comes, it falls off. Some of them hang on a little longer than others. Some turn colors, some turn bright, some turn brown. They get blown by the wind. Some of them are put in wax paper and pressed down for decorative. Some of them are reused in some creative arts. Some of them simply blow away, dry up, and rot away. And I was more like that I didn't have a plan. And so if you operate without a plan, you end up with the winds of the world dictating where you end up. And that's not comfortable. Right. And when I realized that I had value that I didn't recognize, and other people saw more value in me than I did, particularly my wife. My wife is just so incredible. We've now been together for 51 years. If you can look at with amazement that in 51 years, she's never fussed at me.
Wow.
She's never had a cross word to say to me one time. She's always been the one who said, it doesn't matter. I know we don't have the best living circumstance, but I would rather be with you in the bad circumstance than to be with anybody else. So if you just tell me that you'll try to do it differently, I'll be your wife. Wow. And that helps. When you have that kind of affection and that kind of love, it's strong. Right. I learned to be led.
And you learn to lead at home first, right? It's often said that you can tell a great leader by how they lead their family, right? And how they're received by their family. Because we have a lot of people showing up in the public space, and private space is very, very different. But when your family respects you and is behind you and staying behind you, then other people will have a tendency to follow you as well.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind that it influenced other people to like and care about and learn to love me and to be able to show it in a different way that maybe it had ever been shown before.
Right.
Learn that. And I was 35 years old before I learned that. It's not too late. When I tell you I had no sense until I was 35, I did everything wrong there was to do. And when I realized I was going to be a bad example for my children, and I didn't want them to be ashamed of their dad, that I have to do something if I can't think of this road that I'm on. And so I changed and I got busy, and I went from half working to working. When I say half working, I wanted a 20-hour-a-week job. I didn't want it. I went from that to doing about 85 hours a week on a regular basis for years. I didn't take a day off for 7 months. Not a day off for myself. I took a day off to help the family do something, help somebody else do something. But just to have a day to just relax, I didn't take one for 7 years.
How do you sustain that?
It was very difficult to sustain, except I learned to operate on about 3.5, 4 hours a night. And that became enough. And it's evolved in part of my habitual performance. Even now, I sleep about 4.5 hours a night. And if I decide to take a nap, I take a nap in the middle of the day for an hour, hour and a half, and I'm recharged like I've been sleeping 10 hours. So it's a mental process that you develop, and doctors say, you need more rest.
But that's your makeup, your body, right? It's not necessarily something. Would you advocate other people to do that?
Well, I don't know.
Right.
I just don't know. But that's what I do.
Right.
And I can't speak for other people, but to have the opportunity to learn that. And so in working in social service, I worked at a group called Delinquency years. I worked in the methadone program for heroin addicts for another 10 years, and I needed to make more money, so I left, and that's how I ended up in the automobile business. I needed to make more money, and my wife had a heart attack. We had no insurance. $40,000 in medical bills, and if I didn't pay the medical bill every month, the doctors wouldn't even see it.
Oh, wow.
So I had to go get it. And I took a job selling cars at Hoffman Lincoln Mercury. And I did that because I'm so big. I was 6'8". At that point, I weighed around 270. And I couldn't fit in a Honda. I couldn't fit in a Toyota. I couldn't fit most cars. So I knew Lincolns were big and the Grand Marquis was a car. And that's how I chose which store. Something that I could at least get in to be able to avail myself to a customer to sit in the car and explain it to. And I chose the car business because I saw failure among salespeople. And I saw that guy can make it. He doesn't even shine his shoes. He doesn't wash his hair. His hands and nails are dirty. He doesn't pay attention. I bought a car from a guy, a $20,000 car in 1984. And on the way to the gas station from the dealership, I ran out of
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my God.
And it was 2 blocks away.
Wow.
It was 2 blocks. And the car was so empty, it didn't have, and it was diesel. And this means you can't put fuel in it and take off. It required a day of service. I couldn't even take the car home.
Wow.
And so I asked him, how much money did you make last year? He said, I made $35,000. I said, this is a no-brainer. He can make $35,000. I can make $100,000.
Wow.
I can figure out. And I took the job just for him. And then I learned that it was so bad inside that I needed to perform better than I could as a salesperson. You know, and have inventory to be able to send cars on, have a car sitting on the used car line that won't start. All of those things affect your ability to
Absolutely.
managerial things to be able to have products. And so I learned the business from the inside out.
And that's interesting that you say that, because I know in automobile industry, everything is about the sales, but other leaders and other industries need to also talk about and think about how they're being presented to the clients from that perspective, because we all, in a sense, are selling if we want our clients to come back, or we even want, if we're selling to vendors, if we want them to come back. Leaders have to have that kind of sales mentality, right? Or how am I showing up mentality?
Absolutely. Let me tell you something that's interesting. In the car business, there's a term called service subscription. It's service because you only buy a car every 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. But you have to have the car service every 5 or 8 months. And if you have the car service at a dealership, the service is so bad and expensive, most people don't want to buy it. The measurement of how good you are of service absorption is what percentage of your fixed overhead is covered from the parts, service, and body shop. The benchmark in order to sell cars successfully is 85% of your fixed overhead expenses should be covered from the service department.
That's huge.
And it's huge.
That's huge.
Most of them operate in the 55-60%. The dealers tell me they didn't even want to have a service department. They hated the technicians. They didn't want to take care of those mechanics. They didn't want to have all those parts. They didn't want to do that. They just wanted to sell cars. And none of them.
Yeah, because that sounds like that's the meat and bread of the whole establishment.
So it's service. Right. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to serve. And that's, the name of the dealership that we were Springfield Lincoln Mercury when I bought the school. I changed the name to Greater.
Yeah.
And Greater came from the biblical. Greater is he that is in you. So I chose to follow what I believe is God's path for me to serve. And my mission today and every day is to make somebody else's day better.
That's awesome.
My purpose. That's what God put me here for. I didn't come here for me. I came here to be of service to other people. And the only way you can do that is you have to love them.
Yeah.
And you have to love them. That whatever you do has to be a win-win.
I'm glad you said that, because I often ask people when I'm talking to them, why have you come? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? And they think about the physical space that we're in. No. There is a real, much larger, bigger divine purpose for why you're here. So why have you come? And it's not until we understand that, which gets back to your point about identity, because I get that. And, sometimes I'm still trying to make sure I'm sure-footed on what my identity is, not trying to become somebody else or do it somebody else's way, but being very anchored in who I am and what I'm called to do. But I think that's something we all need to do, especially leaders, because then we give people who are or on our teams the ability to do the same thing. So we have to model that for people. But the question has to be answered by everyone. Why have you come? And I'm so glad you brought that up. We come to serve in the capacity that we've been given to serve.
It's a requirement. And so it's something that when I look at coming to a dealership that was number 51 out of 68 in customer satisfaction, which means you're not having very many people.
Right.
And you have to always hunt new customers. And the acquisition cost for those customers turns out to be $400 to $500 per customer. And you're making $800 to $1,000 per car. You don't have much left after you've gotten a new customer. And why don't you service the customer properly so they'll come back willingly and happily and anticipate coming in and get their car repaired? So one of the things that I required was to serve the client. If they come in to get the tire pressure check, you had to check the brakes. You had to check the tires. You had to see if there was enough oil in the car. You needed to take the spare tire and write it on a sheet to explain to the client your brakes are in good shape, but your right front tires look low. It's going to be fine for a few months, but it is worn. In the next 6 or 8 months, you need to plan on getting a set.
Right.
So I can educate you so you can be prepared to come back to us and spend the money you're going to spend somewhere else with us rather than go somewhere.
Because you're going to spend it somewhere else, right?
It's going to get spent. You're going to have to buy tires, or you're going to need brakes, or there's an oil leak.
Right.
Or it's not running very well. It's not running good. So you're going to have to get some mechanical work done. Take care of the customer. And there's an old song that says, can't be with the one you love. Love the one you love.
That's right.
So when you wait, dedicate yourself to that client.
And that's about relationship, right? It's all about building those relationships so that it's a sustainable relationship. You can trace it back to where that relationship started. Where did it fall? I love the fact that you've been able to quantify every aspect of your business. And sometimes in some industries, we don't take the time to do that because that's not what we do. But we need to talk about what's the return on investment. And doing that is like, where are we hitting and how are we getting that? How are we servicing and how well are we doing? It has to be quantified so it's meaningful. Numbers are meaningful, especially to the decision maker.
You have some return on investment to sustain yourself.
That's good.
You have to pay your lights, your mortgage, your gas bill, your insurance, get your car fixed, buy another car, buy your books, take care of the computer, buy a new one, pay for your education. travel, the things that you have to do to be in business.
I want everybody to make sure you take a note. Where there's no profit, there's no pleasure. That's good. Y'all can tweet that. So I wanted to ask you because, again, as doing this Intesoul leadership and the whole purpose around it is to bring people's awareness to the fact of how we've been leading in the past, to how we need to shift and lead differently if we're going to carve out this new place that we're in, this new society we're in. I think everybody gets it now that we're not going back to normal. There's no new normal. There's just new, and we have the obligation to shape it for the next generations coming behind us and as leaders. So how have you seen leadership transitioning and changing over the years?
Well, before we go that far, I want to go back a little bit to some things that I encountered.
Sure.
Because about 35% of my time in the car store was spent on personnel issues. And a lot of those were things like child support and having to pay your insurance bill, and you need time off from work because something's gone wrong at home. And if things aren't right at home, pretty difficult to function in your job. And so we had an occasion where a guy was struggling, who was a nice guy, but you could tell he was struggling. He was coming to work late, and he had a hygiene problem, which is very difficult to manage. Tell somebody, I'm sorry, but you're coming to work and you don't smell right. And you cigarettes and drink coffee all day, and you have a breath problem, and I have to have you be cleaned up. You're the service manager, and I need to help you do better. And so the assistant director wanted to fire him, and then said, "Can't fire him. There's something going on with him. The rule says if you are empowered to make the decision to make sure customers taken care of, I have to empower you to take care of the employee so the employee can be." And so before, Mother Johnson said, she called me one day. She said, "I'm so glad you're you." "What do you mean?" She said, "I heard from a guy on the radio that he wanted to fire somebody. And you said, you might be able to fire them, but not today. Or you can fire them. You have to take them to lunch. Take a credit card, take them to dinner. You have to spend 2 hours at the restaurant with this man, with this person. Find out what's going on in his life. If there's a way you can help him help himself so that he can help you."
That is excellent. That is so excellent. In my book, No Bosses Allowed, Lead to Serve and Transform, the very first position where there's 12 positions where I'm comparing a boss to a leader. And the very first position is individuals matter. And I talk about that the manager, that starts with you as a leader, but you have to understand that every individual on your team matters. And until that happens, you're not going to get the engagement that you need. And to your other point, what's going on in their community, because they're bringing that into the workplace, right? And so we have to, I love that. That should be a minimum, spending 2 hours with people, and it's not necessarily 2 consecutive hours, because you need some time in between to absorb and really hear what was said during that time. That's caring.
That's what I mean. 2 hours. I'm glad you clarified that, because I don't mean just 2 hours at once.
Right.
But today you want to go back Thursday, you want to go back Friday, Monday, but you have to spend some time with this person. And as it turns out, he had more problems than we could have ever imagined. His wife was a Sunday school teacher who had fallen into the abyss. What do I mean by that? She became a sex addict to people who were recruiting her on the internet.
Oh, wow.
And she took his children, their children, with her from Massachusetts to Ohio to meet a guy who she'd never met before. And they had to sit in the lobby of a hotel while she went upstairs to be intimate with the guy. And he said she wasn't spending time with, and she told her children that she should just kill herself. And he said, "Honey, come home. Come home. You're not home. You're way over there, but I am willing to help you if you come home." Isn't that something?
That is amazing.
She's up, and he said, "Come home."
Yeah, that's amazing.
That was like a heck of a. For me, he taught me. Yeah, honey, come home.
That's that unconditional love we're supposed to have, right? And it talks about in 1 Corinthians 13, and you hardly see the wrong that anyone else does, right? That's the love we're called to do. And people was like, well, we're talking about leading and we're talking about workplace or we're talking about ministry or we're talking about community stuff. Yeah, you're supposed to love. You're supposed to still love in that sense.
The answer, because, God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son.
Right.
One of the things and one of the songs that I hear and I listen to often is he thought I was to die.
Yes. I love that song.
I can't understand. My dad's rule is that, boy, you don't need to cry because you're ugly.
Oh, stop it.
When you cry.
Ah.
Yeah, that's cool. So it affects my thinking even when I cry because it makes me smile.
Nice.
I think about the time. It's a nice gesture they left me with. It turns out that this guy brought his wife back 3 times from a bad circumstance. And they healed.
Nice.
And they're still.
Oh, awesome.
And the flat. Isn't that amazing?
That's awesome.
I have to save a family. I never thought I was doing that, but I still get cards and letters and notes from him. Now.
I love the fact that as his leader in the workplace, you were able to really get underneath that iceberg, if you will, because, there's a little bit on the surface, but there's a whole bunch underneath. And you coached another leader to really spend time with him. And look, you guys were able to really take part in someone's life bigger than just their 9 to 5.
We would never.
Right.
I would have never. Let's be that. I would have never known that. And I needed to know.
Right.
Because it affects my thinking of what I'm supposed to do. And so winning the Customer Satisfaction Awards by empowering the employees, and people would ask about a raise all the time, because that's what people do.
Right.
And I said the fastest way to get a raise here is improve your customer satisfaction rate. When our customer satisfaction rating is at the number 1 position, which is what I want to be, then you automatically get another 10% income in money for them.
Nice. Nice.
I mean, it's just going to be not scripted. You don't have to ask for it. You're just going to get a pay raise that day.
Wow.
That day. And it's a split check. CSI.
Nice.
And, 10% if you make $100,000, you get a 10% raise. That's substantial.
Very nice. Very, very.
And then I paid I paid the taxes so that it was a real 10%.
Oh, wow.
So it was just an interesting way. And Ford Motor Company wrote me, they wrote an article in their magazine, and they called our dealership a study in social services because they thought I was too nice to be a dealer. But every year I won the Customer Satisfaction Award that they gave. And so after a while, they stopped giving the award.
What? They didn't want to give it to you?
This is Harvey. He's going to win it. Harvey's going to win it.
Wow. But you were able to prove that you were able to prove your case by the numbers showed it. The numbers showed it.
But then down overall, and they almost went out of business because they didn't take care of the customer.
Right.
If you had a market problem and you had a problem with your car, as a dealer, I didn't just say, well, it's out of warranty. I would call Detroit. This car's been warranted about 1,000 miles. And now they've blown engine. It had to be some technical defect that we didn't pick up yet. So let's do something to help this client out.
Right.
And I know the people at the top, and they would give me leeway to fix it.
Yeah. Going the extra mile.
So now, why wouldn't I do that for my client?
Right.
That's my job. To have them help. And I committed.
Committed. That's the word. Committed.
I published my cell phone number in 1994. Well, people call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you bought a car from us or you had a service and it wasn't right, call me. I'll come get you. And I would bring my wife's car or some car to them. And I waited for the tow truck.
Wow. That's commitment.
In Massachusetts. You know what? So what are they going to tell somebody now? That guy came and got one.
Yeah.
At 2 in the morning.
Right.
The chairman of the board of United Steel called me until he passed away. Every year, he had 52 Lincolns in his garage. 52.
Wow.
Every year he called me, I want to buy a car, Harvey, but you're the only dealer I trust.
Wow.
So for me to buy a car, please. I am still in Waltham, Mass, but I'll go wherever you tell me to get the car. And I would call one of my friends and said, you can make $1,000. That's all you got to make. You're not going to make any more. And you got to sell this man the car, and it has to be prepped properly. It has to be clean. It has to be a full tank of gas. And you have to deliver it to his home. Do you want to make the 1,000 and you want to wait till somebody else happens to come down?
Right. Go with the sure thing.
Yeah, just go get your money.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend money to advertise to get a new person.
Right.
I'm flattered by some of those things, and they're life-changing.
There are many good milestones, and they're not only life-changing for you, but life-changing for the people that you are impacting, and it's proven over time. And that's what when you talk about building legacy, now that's legacy.
You know what I do in the restaurant? One rule, this is how I built the business. We got broke. I started with $600 in the restaurant business. And I took a grill from the house and went on the corner and started cooking. Dead broke. I ended up with one phrase that said, if you like it, come back. If you don't like it, come back. And get your money back, even if it's a week later and you've eaten all the food.
How many times did you have do you know how many times you had to honor that?
My goodness, it got to the point that people would come back 3 weeks later and say, I had ribs and they weren't good. Any good? And I spent 3 weeks in a row saying the same thing. We're coming back to get more ribs. So I'd like to officially disinvite you. I'm not going to sell you anything else. I can't afford to do business with you.
Yeah. So you couldn't do business with that person anymore.
No, I just choose not to do business because I want to be happy. And if you're going to give me the kind of stress that I can't be happy with, I'd rather be by myself.
And it goes back to what you said, profit brings pleasure. And that was not going to be profitable if they kept bringing back the foolishness, coming back erroneously. So we're going to start to wrap up. What would your advice be to leaders today? And we'll start with, and I don't know if it would change. You can tell me if your advice would change, whether it's a established, extensive, senior leader or whether it's an emerging leader. So maybe let's start with someone who's been doing this for a little while or some extensive period of time, considered a veteran. What would your advice be to them?
Well, first of all, you have to benchmark and study the best. You have to study the best and set some goals where you want to achieve. And you look for somebody who's doing similar to what you want to do and benchmark that so you can try to exceed whatever that person is doing. And then you have to commit. So it takes some time. It may take some money. But if it's not going to be a win-win-win, then there's no point in doing it. You may as well leave your shoes untied and your hair uncombed and don't take a bath because it's not going to come to fruition until you manage the things necessary to be a leader that somebody can look up to. And when I say, my mother said something to me because I'm such a big guy. The only time you should look down on somebody is when you're trying to pick them up. So don't anybody because everybody has value and you must search for the value person because sometimes they don't see it and you might be able to help that person find out how to be victorious in this world under this circumstance right now to improve their lot and the lot of the world because that's how we're going to change the world. It has to come from love and you just have to love enough. Did you ever know Manny Bill?
I don't think so.
Glenda Copes. Paul Copes.
Yeah.
Okay, their mom, they had a lot of children. And I think, I don't want to give you the wrong number, I think it was like 14 children. And they're all overachievers. And I asked her, oh, wow. They've been worked for Newsday, the managing editor, the colonel in the Army, vice president of the insurance company in charge of real estate around the world. All of them are overachievers. And I said, Miss Bailey, you live in a project. How did you do this? She said, you gotta love every baby like this is the last baby you gotta have, and love them enough to lift them up to the Lord and have them till they can stand on their own 2 feet looking up to the Lord. You gotta love them. Don't pick on your children. I don't care what they say, how they manage it. And every person, even if a relationship is a much younger, inexperienced one who's trying to find their footing, love them. You never know how it's going to come out. That might be the person who helps save your life. May have to take care of your children. May have to take care of your mom. May have to take care of you mentally. We don't know where we're going to end up. But I would think as I'm the leaf that blows off the tree, that somebody would find me and put me in wax paper so I could start.
That's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much.
I want to live and I want to be happy. And every day we must be grateful for whatever it is you get and go to work for what you want. And your thing and let the master do his thing.
That's excellent. And I think that's whether you're a senior leader or you're an emerging leader, You need to take that advice to heart. Listen to this on the replay and replay and replay until you get it so ingrained in you that you can then do it as a second nature, as just naturally, because that is the key. That is the key. Thank you so much for joining us today on Intesoul Leadership. For those of you who have been watching, please subscribe to this channel, share with other people, because as I said, we want to help leaders across the globe really be able to rise above situations and circumstances that they might feel are impossible. But if they can hear the lessons learned by other leaders who are in the trenches today, who have been in there before them, because time repeats itself slightly different, and then we can come together with an innovative way of collaborative way of overcoming every obstacle that you see. That's why we're here to support you as leaders. And again, follow my channel at DestinySpeak. You can follow the broadcast Intesoul Leadership. I also offer you all to grab the new 30-day journal, Unlock Your Leadership Potential. It has 4 capacities that it really addresses: vision, performance, authentic communication, empowering you and your team, and then adaptable resilience. It will take you through prompts and messaging and quotes in there that will help you rise and unlock even more of your leadership potential. You can grab it at my website on www.destinyspeak.com. As we wrap up, what are the last words, Mr. Clay, that you would give to our listeners?
Well, I would want to share this with you. I did something interesting in Springfield with a column that ran on the obituary page every Monday. It was called Harvey's Thoughts. And I can find some positive quotes, 3, 4, 5, that were empowering, that were creative, that were solidly based in love, that you can win. And I published that until the newspaper said it's not worth much money to them. And so I spent $140,000 a year in budget with that newspaper. I took $140,000 out and spent it somewhere else. But now you have such a nice presentation, and the process of what you're going to, I can see it coming. I see it. When you might just every day in social media put some great quote from some great person to change the greatness of a soul that hasn't found themselves yet.
I'm going to do that.
You're so talented, so wonderful, so happy to be here with you today.
Thank you so much.
Always find a way to make somebody smile today.
Yeah. And we need that so much today. We need it so much. So thank you all for tuning in, and join us next week on Intesoul Leadership. I again want to thank my auspicious guest, Mr. Harvey Clay. Give my love to your wife and your family. And until next time, we'll see you all on Intesoul Leadership.
Thank you.